That's where strategies fail. Strategies could be great on paper. We always used to say, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right?
Yes.
I have seen it firsthand. It's strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. When colleagues leave us because they want to set up a company, we celebrate. Because we know you're going to become a Careem mafia. Will it continue to be an app? Will it be completely different because the customer's mindset is now shifting into conversational and whatnot?
Welcome to Beyond the Deck, the Roland Berger podcast, where we step out of the slides and into the real stories shaping the world and the region. Today I have with me Nourhan Farhat. She's the VP of People, Strategy and Ventures at Kareem. We're going to have a very, very dynamic conversation talking about how Kareem is shaping this very exciting space here in the region. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's very great to have you. And let's just dive straight into it. Okay, so you studied engineering, right? Then moved into consulting, then into the corporate world at Kareem. Yep. So tell me a little bit about, let's say, the thought process of these different steps.
Absolutely. So I guess engineering to consulting was a relatively straightforward one, because I tried 101 internships throughout my engineering studying years. I never loved any of them, to be super honest. I felt like it was a bit too repetitive for my liking. Consulting, I entered by a bit of a pure coincidence. And fun fact, it was Roland Berger's presentation that the first session that I had ever heard about consulting was Roland Berger giving a presentation about what consulting was and the typical...
We did a good job.
You guys did a fantastic job. You've changed my career since then, right?
Great.
So I attended that session and I heard about consulting and how we changed the company's trajectories in life. And I joined consulting back then. And I did find myself quite a lot in the consulting world. And for quite a long period of time, the 10 years that I spent in consulting, thought I'm going to just stay there. I really enjoyed it. I loved the problem-solving aspect of it and whatnot. And then another surprise came along the way, where Kareem reached out for a corporate strategy role. I did interview, married that with a bit of... I did feel like a push to start doing things myself. Okay. As you know, in consulting, it's a bit more behind the scenes. You're you're inside the deck versus outside the deck. And I wanted to own a bit more the deliverables. So I said, you know what, let me try to get into the business world myself. Max, I go back to my comfort zone of consulting. 4 or 5 years later, I'm still in the corporate world and I'm quite enjoying it so far.
Okay, great. And what did you say, surprised you the most about that shift, right? Because as consultants, we feel like, we're on the outside, but we feel like we're in the inside and that we know what it means to be an operator and to have skin in the game. But I can imagine it's quite different. So tell me a little bit about what was your first, let's say, aha moment when you stepped into the other side?
I think it's a sentence that you usually say in consulting, and it only really clicked. There was a light that sort of came in my mind when I joined the corporate world. We always used to say, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? Yes. I have seen it firsthand. Now that I look, especially now that I look after both strategy and people, man, culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay. If you want.
Okay. So you'll stand behind that.
100%. I think that's where strategies fail. Strategies could be great on paper, but unless you really fix the operating model, the incentives, the entire culture of the company, the values of the company, I think that's the make it or break it.
Okay, great. Excellent. Well, I'll make note of that and incorporate that into my...
Yeah, we need to convince consultants it actually does matter.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I at RB, actually, I wear this hat of also managing the culture aspect. So
amazing.
Definitely, I'm very happy to hear that this is also, let's say, permeating across other organizations. You mentioned in your journey that you had, quite a big... stint in consulting, right?
Yeah.
10 years, you said?
Yes.
So quite a formative period of your career, and some of it at Roland Berger, right?
Absolutely.
So what stayed with you the most? What did you value the most during your time at Roland Berger?
I think what's amazing about RB is it builds resilience. Of course, yes, problem solving, structure and whatnot, but now when I usually reflect back on Roland Berger, it's very well-rounded. You are a consultant through and through. You do it from the A of figuring out what the problem statement is, to the breaking down, to getting your own, figuring out where to find your data, to finding your experts, until you own the client relationship, all as a business analyst even. that helps shape very strong character very early on. So I do very much appreciate that mindset of no matter what the problem is, you can figure it out.
Yes.
That is something that is truly, truly helpful for any career that you want to pursue.
Great. And you'd say that now in your role in the corporate side, is that then the thing that you go back to the most? Let's say the skill or the mindset is this point of resilience, and that no matter what you throw at me, I can figure it out. Is that
100%? I wouldn't say it's even only with me. That's something that I look for all of the candidates, all of the team members that I'm working with on a daily basis. Drive and resilience for me is the make it or break it. Because look, skills you can always train, you can always learn along the way. But that mindset shift is something very difficult to train later in your career. So I really appreciate when someone has that mentality and that mindset.
Excellent, great. When I was introducing you, I noticed that I was saying a lot of roles. I'd already prepared, of course, but then I was like, people, culture, people, strategy, ventures. So that's a lot of hats to wear, right? So first of all, tell me, how did you come to wear that many hats at Kareem?
So I joined Kareem as the head of corporate strategy and the chief of staff. Ventures made sense because it's the smaller set of businesses that Kareem has. So that includes Kareem Box, shops, bikes, dine out, and tenants, which are our partners that provide both home services and car rentals. It made sense to put them with strategy because each of them has a different role to play within the super app. And it's much closer to the center of the strategy. I can very much easier redirect them at what role I want them to play in the super app. You are the one that's meant to acquire customers for me. You're the one that's meant to generate profitability for me, etc., etc. The other hat, the people team hat, I think it was two reasons why these things came together. First and foremost was culture eats strategy for breakfast. So it is indeed that we had a strategy we wanted to deliver and wanted to make sure that the culture that we have, the talent strategy that we have is very much aligned with the strategy at the time. And second is it was a bit of a time period where we didn't have a person playing the head of people role. So we said I can hold it for a little while. Now, 4 years later, I'm still playing the role. And it's relatively working out. Right now, I actually know that multiple companies in the tech world in the region have merged strategy and people.
Okay.
So
perhaps
it's a long-term stretch. I don't know.
You set that trend.
I don't
maybe.
know.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that it's becoming a thing where culture and strategy are actually coming hand in hand.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it didn't happen completely by design. Some by design, some just by life. But in the end, having these three pieces all working together, I think makes a lot of sense, right? Yeah. Having the people aspect linked to the strategy, and of course, then having your ventures, which I understand is almost like an entrepreneurship.
Correct.
Right. At Roland Berger, one of our values is entrepreneurship, right? True. Do you also feel like you get to play your maybe scratch the entrepreneurship itch by doing this entrepreneurship role as well and setting up new ventures and all of that? Do you feel that feeling of a startup and within a bigger structure, of course?
The answer is absolutely yes. And actually, going back to your first question on why did I do the moves that I did, I've always wanted to have something of my own, a company of my own. So when I was first speaking to the Kareem team, I had wanted to come into playing a P&L. But that's a very difficult thing from being just a consultant, a generalist consultant, into that. So I've always had that itch of, I want to run a business,
owning
right?
Something,
I wanted to own a business. I wanted to see through the decisions of if I change a price of something, what's the implication on what my customers are feeling on a day-to-day basis. If I were to change, the demand projections, how does the captain get impacted, et cetera, et cetera. That was truly incredible. And by the way, all of the learnings that come from the ventures world that we have today do feed back into the strategy and do feed back into the people and culture aspect today.
Excellent. A little bit earlier, you used the term super app. Mm-hmm. Right? Now here in Dubai, this is a known term. Yeah. But I'll confess, I moved to the region relatively recently, beginning of 2024. Yeah. I'd never heard that term ever. Yeah. Super app, also called everything app. You also use that term, right? Correct. For this is a global podcast, so for people outside of the region that are not as familiar with this concept, can you just describe a little bit what the essence of this model is? Because I'm sure there's more to it than just aggregating a bunch of different services on a platform, right? Tell me a little bit about just what really drives this model.
Absolutely. So basically, it removes the complexity and the friction of having to download multiple different applications into making it into one. It consolidates your identity, payments, locations, etc. onto a single app. Not only that, it's not only about the convenience element of it, it's about putting your brand and trust into getting the customer trust into a single brand, into that single app. I know when I come into the X super app, in this case, into the Careem super app, I'll get this. For example, we aspire to stand for dependability. I want every customer that either uses ride hailing, or if they use food deliveries, or if they use grocery deliveries or box or whatever it is, they have that stamp in the back of their mind of, I will get what they promised me. And if they don't, they will do whatever it takes to make it up for me. Right?
That consistency.
That consistency of services on a single frictionless experience is something that's very valuable by the customer in our region.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like the way when you describe it, that it would be valuable for everyone.
Yep.
Yet, this hasn't really taken off, at least to my knowledge, in the US or in Europe. I mean, again, I moved from the US here, and I hadn't really experienced this concept of this fully integrated super app. Why is this so successful here in the region vis-a-vis, say, the West?
Great question. So look, I think there are 3 reasons why it a bit succeeds more so in the East versus the West. Super apps succeed more in the East versus the West. First is regulations. In general, in the West, it's a bit more difficult for you given the antitrust regulations and the competition laws, et cetera, et cetera. Here, we're a bit more relaxed on some of these dimensions. That's one. Second is the economic structure of the market allows for these kinds of services and super apps to exist. To give you an example, right? Q-commerce is a very thin margin business in general. But given the higher disposable income vis-a-vis the cost of providing that service, it becomes it has the ability to become a profitable business in our region versus in the West, it is more difficult given it's a gig economy, it's more expensive to do the deliveries and whatnot.
Right. So that arbitrage you have
100% there. 100% the arbitrage that you have. And then the third is timing. Because if you think about it, when the time where super apps were growing massively, especially in China, for example, which is where it mainly started, that's where everyone was coming online, coming more digital. And sort of our region came mobile first. We skipped the entire era of websites first. We didn't have the infrastructure of payments and whatnot. So timing also played a role in we could create the full ecosystem versus focus very deep on a single service.
Yes. Okay. So you got to almost leapfrog, so to speak, all these steps of distribution and go straight into the, let's say, digital native type.
And so we all went into building an ecosystem versus building a single product very, very, very deeply.
Okay. Great. Well, so I'm a customer of Kareem, right?
Thank you for your loyalty.
Yes. So of course I'm very familiar with your services.
What's your favorite one?
Sorry?
What's your favorite one?
Ride hailing. Ride hailing, yeah. I would say that's my main go-to.
Thank you.
But in preparation for this podcast, I did a little bit more research on the company, right? The corporation. It's such a consumer-facing brand that sometimes you forget that there's also a very big corporation behind it. I went to look at the website, etc., and I saw that there's a lot of talk about purpose.
Yeah.
Right? And I wanted to get from you just if you could distill. I don't need the whole website slogan. Just in a few words, in your interpretation, what is really the purpose of Kareem?
Fun fact, yesterday was our Values Fest, and the core of it was about our purpose. So
it's called the Values Fest?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. So we spend the day basically talking about our why and the how, right? The why is our purpose and the how is our values, our 6 values. In 2012, when Mudassir and Magnus, our 2 co-founders, started Kareem, it was to deliver on a purpose. They wrote, it's about simplifying and improving the lives of people and building an awesome organization that inspires. So it's a 2-pronged sort of purpose, if you'd like. I promise you, and I've seen a lot of mission statements written in many companies that I've consulted for, I've never seen it lived as much. Okay. In the beginning of when Kareem started, if you think about it, Kareem shaped a lot of social impact, infrastructure impact, a lot of economic impact to a region that didn't have such big tech companies, right? In 2012, in Saudi, it was the first company that helped women actually be able to commute from point A to point B without having to be with a male counterpart, right? Yes. It helped Capitinas actually be employed. We've employed in chapter 1 of the ride-hailing era, basically before we became a super app, millions of captains with jobs. It gave them billions of dollars of earnings. It helped Pakistan, when it launched in Pakistan, it actually helped create the infrastructure of the country. So it created the transport system. And so it genuinely simplified people's lives. In chapter 2, it continues to do so. We've shifted into becoming a super app with the essence of it simplifies people's lives. It provides your convenience. And then on the second aspect of the purpose, it's all about how do I make sure I develop my colleagues. By the way, for example, I'll give you an example. When colleagues leave us, and the reason of the exit interview is I'm leaving because I want to set up a company, we celebrate. We never try to retain you back because we know you're going to become a Kareem mafia.
Okay.
We call you the Kareem Mafia. Okay. You are the Kareem Mafia. You're going to set up the next startup that will hopefully help us help this region.
And enrich the ecosystem.
100%. So it does come from a very purposeful, every move that we're making, every strategic move is guided by that purpose. Every institutional change that we do is helped guide by this purpose as well.
Great. And you put a lot of emphasis on the captains. I really like that. But what do you say the impact on the merchants is? You know?
Absolutely. And I think that's a new thing that came with the super app. As we moved into a super app, we had, instead of only focusing on the customer and captain, the marketplace added a
that's why I felt that this was a new element.
Absolutely right. It helps create so much business for both the big merchants that exist today, but also the smaller businesses and restaurants and shops that you have all across the region. We do help create economic impact for all of these different players.
Okay, great. We can't have a podcast or a conversation nowadays without talking about AI.
Oh, of course.
And specifically because you are a tech-enabled business, that's probably even more of a thing. So tell me a little bit about how AI is transforming the way that you do business and what excites you, looking into the future in terms of the potential for AI.
Another fun fact, in 2019, we had the year of AI at Careem. So it was before it became trendy and hyped up that we cared about AI. We built a lot of our tech actually based on a lot of AI, right? Back in the day, the ride-hailing demand prediction model was all AI enabled, the dispatching algorithm and whatnot. More recently, of course, it's still part of our priorities, and we do it sort of across 3 buckets, I want to say. The first bucket is about how do I help my colleagues become more productive, the company become more productive, right? How do I make sure that everyone is using AI to focus on what matters a bit more, if you see what I mean? Like, how do I create time for them to do what only they can do versus a system is today able to unlock? The second bucket is all about AI on our products. So you said you use Kareem. Have you seen the grocery list we just launched?
I have not. No.
Yeah, you need
to
check it out. More of a user.
I'll check it out. Maybe after this conversation. So
right now you can literally write your grocery list anywhere on a piece of paper or a notepad, or you share it with your family member and whatnot. You take a snapshot and it creates the grocery list and gets delivered to you.
Fantastic.
So make it live even more easy for our customers using AI. And then last but not least is reimagining how super apps look like in the future AI world. Will it continue to be an app? Will it be completely different because the customer's mindset is now shifting into conversational and whatnot? So those are the 3 areas.
So I would say, you sound very excited about the topic. It sounds like you see much more potential and opportunity than risk. Right? But I guess there's probably some risk for your business as well. Or what would you say?
I wish to believe that we're very active. We're being very proactive about figuring out where we can use it to our own good versus be the ones who are on the receiving end of its disruption, right? I know a lot of discussions today are about whether it will impact people's jobs, right? How many articles do you read every day on consulting going bust because of AI tomorrow?
Sure.
Being able to generate your strategy. It's not really the case, right? Yes, it has research, it has analysis and whatnot, but humans will always be the biggest value add in all of this. So yes, it's there. We need to adapt to it, but it's never going to be so risky in my point of view that we become less important.
Okay, excellent. Now, earlier I had touched on the point of the many hats you wear. Right? I listed 3, right? People, strategy, and the ventures. But there are other hats that you wear as well. You're also a wife, and you have 2 boys. And if the boys are anything like you, I bet they're very high energy. So now, tell me a little bit about how you manage all of these combined hats of your profession, very demanding professional life, and then also the personal side.
Yeah, God bless them. They're amazing, energetic little munchkins.
Okay. That's how I imagine them.
Exactly. Yeah. Look, I think 2 things. One, I have a very clear operating model. I'm a consultant. I have my own personal operating model.
Great. I'd like to hear it.
And I make that very clear to everyone who I work with, and generally to my family is also aware of how I construct my days and weeks and whatnot. So on the days where I am with the family, I am with the family. And on the days where I have something very urgent at work, I am at work.
Clear boundaries then.
Very clear boundaries. And the boundaries are very clear to the people who need to be aware of it, right? So I am at dinner with my kids and I put them to sleep. I do not pick up my phone. On weekends, I am with my family. At work, I do not, to the extent that I can, I am focused on work as much as I can. Okay. So that's something that's very, very important. But the second thing is also, when push comes to shove, I'm very clear about which hat I'm never going to is the
Your
first
priorities.
hat. My hat is very clear on which hat is the one that comes first before any of the other hats in life, let alone work versus family.
Yes.
Like family will come first no matter what.
That's beautiful. Great. Yeah. And it's a little bit, it's cool, right? That you work on building a platform that enables people to maybe, regain control over their time and have more time for their families and for their free time, etc. At the same time, you're someone who probably needs that the most, right? So you're working on building something that I think you're one of the main beneficiaries of, right? In terms of the convenience that you need. Just to end now on an inspirational note for the listeners, if you, for ambitious professionals out there, maybe particularly for young women who see you as a role model, what advice can you give in terms of that maybe you wish someone had given you a bit earlier in your career?
I think I'll go to the sentence I mentioned earlier, which is be very clear about your operating model and make it clear to others. I think we always hold ourselves back and we think, oh, should I? What if? Etc. etc. I think if you are in a company, and generally with anyone who you're dealing with, if you're valued enough, they will respect it as well. If they don't respect it enough, you're probably not in the right place either, or you haven't found your match in the place, right? So it's very important. It gives you so much clarity and comfort to be able to balance all of the 2 different dimensions, if I want to simplify it and only make it 2, right?
Yes.
So write it down. It's not an easy thing, or like an operating model is like it's I don't know, a couple of hours in the evening. No, it takes much more than that. Okay. So be very clear about the operating model. Have an explicit discussion with your counterparts on what that looks like, and then make it happen to the extent that you can with very minimal disruptions and exceptions. Okay,
right. So know your value, and then set a very 100%. Clear operating model for your life.
Yes.
Nourhan, it's been wonderful to have you. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.